Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by the last man standing with loserpool.com. As ever, I am your host, Harry Symeou, and this is our first preview show of the season. The Premier League is back. Thank God we've got something to do again. Life has a purpose again. And of course, Arsenal kick off their Premier League campaign on Sunday with a trip up to St. James's Park. So who better to preview that game with me than another Harry? This time it's Harry De Cosemo, football writer, Newcastle United fan, does a lot of work on Newcastle United, well respected within the business and a good friend as well. Harry, how are you, first of all?
I'm good, thank you, Harry. Thanks for having me back on. Looking forward to the season, much more than I was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, it's going to be good to get going again.
Absolutely, no question about that. Harry, we're going to be bringing these preview shows on a weekly basis. We're going to be tapping into people's knowledge like yourselves. People who have a better knowledge of the clubs Arsenal are facing than I do. Starting off with yourself. So what can you tell us about Newcastle United's summer? The Steve Bruce thing happened. He's come in. Are you feeling a little bit more positive about it all now than you were at the beginning?
It's possibly, but not possibly, it is the weirdest summer I've ever seen at Newcastle United. A month ago, it was a disaster. Rafa Benitez was gone. Steve Bruce was about to come in, hadn't quite come in. There's all this thing about possible legal action with Sheffield Wednesday, which is still rumbling on, but has seemed to have gone from the background. I think everything's just moving on a little bit. No signings through the door, and everything was creeping up. 5 new signings through the door since breaking the transfer record on Joelinton, Alan Saint-Maximin as well. Come in, Jetro Willems is a player that Newcastle have wanted for a long time. Kraft yesterday, Emil Kraft, and the right back, and then Andy Carroll as well yesterday as well. So on squad basis, then it's probably, I think the squad's probably better. Obviously, Rafa Benitez leaving, Steve Bruce coming in. Rafa Benitez leaving was always going to make this summer impossible to really be a positive thing, but on the squad, I think the squad is probably as strong as it was last season, maybe slightly better in terms of quality. I'm not sure there's enough numbers there. I think Newcastle, I've never under Ashley have I seen Newcastle build a squad to really compete where they've made themselves stronger. It's just a case of selling players, bringing players to replace them, which has been the case this year. So I think overall you still have to say it's been a bad summer because Rafa Benitez has left, and everybody knows the impact Rafa Benitez had at Newcastle. But it's much more positive than it was last month. And I think a lot of the sort of things, I think everyone's just hoping for a good start now. I think the Rafa Benitez thing is gone. People are moving on. People are planning on boycotting the game on Sunday, and there are plans for protests against Mike Ashley. That's nothing to do with Steve Bruce. That's all Ashley. And there is a bit more reason to be positive. So from Newcastle's point of view, it'll just be about getting a good result on Sunday, and that'll hopefully just calm everything down a little bit, make everyone settled, because there's a lot of fears over potential relegation. If you read the press and the media, a lot of people tipping Newcastle will get relegated this season.
Absolutely. And lots of people are talking about the Andy Carroll signing. That was the big news from Newcastle United yesterday. He's a player who traditionally has caused us all sorts of problems. But there are some comments coming in regarding Andy Carroll. I just want you to clarify. Andy Carroll's not fit to feature on Sunday, is he?
Andy Carroll will play first game, I think, will probably be against Liverpool in about a month's time. He's not played since February. I think he had ankle surgery. So he's running. He's back, in training, but he's not going to play against Arsenal. So you don't have to worry about another late winner like the one against West Ham, or the header against that he scored at the Emirates for Newcastle that season.
Yeah, I mean, lots of bad memories for us when it comes to Andy Carroll. But in terms of Steve Bruce, and I worry a little bit for him that this whole Ashley thing is a little bit of a distraction, and it's probably not setting, the ideal, what's the word, it's not the ideal circumstance for him to start his Newcastle United career. There's already pressure there. There's a bit of a distraction too now. But do you expect Steve Bruce to bring in a lot of these new players straight into the squad? Do you think he'll want to start as he means to go on?
That'll be the one positive that I think a lot of Newcastle fans will take from Bruce from Rafa Benitez. Rafa Benitez always used to make players sit on the bench for a while, and he'd never brought them in. Newcastle fans would be going to the stadium after a big signing, going, "Oh, he's going to start today. It's going to be really exciting," and then you see him on the bench, which frustrated a lot of people. And I think that'll be different this year. I think you'll see Saint-Maximin from the start. You'll see Jolinton in from the start with Almiron, which is going to be really exciting. If Bruce gets the tactics right, Willems might start at left back, but the fullbacks and Carroll aren't the two obvious first team signings. The two big signings are going to start this week. I wouldn't like to say whether Dummett will start at left back or Jetro Willems, and Kraft will start at right back, or Javi Manquillo, because Yedlin's out injured. But I think the two main signings will start, which will please a lot of fans, because that might not have been the case if that was Rafa Benitez in charge.
Okay, interesting stuff. Now, we had a great deadline day too. We managed to get Tierney in. We managed to get David Luiz in for £8 million, which I think is an absolute steal considering his experience and stuff. Yes, he wasn't number one on most people's shopping lists when it comes to centre halves, but given the circumstances, given that Laurent Koscielny left 2 days before the window closed, it made perfect sense. Now, I'm going to bring up on the screen for those of you watching my predicted lineup for Arsenal this weekend. Now, this is my predicted lineup, and I have to stress it is very difficult to predict a starting 11 at this point of the season, because there are players who are not quite fit. There are players who have been on international duty. There are new signings. You don't know how they've gotten on in training. But this is what I've gone with. I've gone with Bernd Leno in goal, a back four of Ainsley, Maitland-Niles, David Luiz, Socrates and Monreal, a midfield pivot of Xhaka and Willock with Ozil just in front of them, Mkhitaryan on the right, Nelson on the left, and Aubameyang up through the middle. That's what I think Unai Emery's going to go with. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, if you think that there'll be anything different, but that's what I'm expecting. Because we know that Torreira's not 100% fit. He returned from international duty quite late. We know that Lacazette's got an injury problem that's kept him out of the last few preseason games. So again, I don't expect him to start. Pepe's another one whose fitness is in question. I know he's a big money signing, but whether he'll come straight in the team, I don't know. I just think Willock's done enough in preseason to warrant that place in the starting 11. And given Unai Emery doesn't tend to throw players, new players, in right from the very beginning. So that's what I think is going to happen anyway. But of course, let me know in the comments. Harry, how do you see this one panning out? I know, again, I'll stress the point. It's so difficult to predict before the season starts because there is no form book to go by. I'm sure we're going to make lots of observations on both sides, which are going to have a sort of new look to them in this coming season. But are you confident that Newcastle can get something at St. James's Park in front of their own fans?
Like you said, it's very hard to tell. We don't know whether, the thing about these big games, when the Big Six came to town under Rafa Benitez, was you knew how Newcastle were going to line up. It was going to be, everyone behind the ball on the break. And, he ended up getting some good results out of those, beating Man City, narrow defeat to Liverpool last season, obviously the year before, beating Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United and everything like that. But Bruce is likely, from everything that's coming out, it's likely that Bruce is going to attack a bit more, which is dangerous against Arsenal if Pepe plays. If is Lacazette injured? Because I noticed he wasn't on your.
We don't know for sure, but he had an injury in preseason and he has missed the last couple of preseason games. So I don't expect him to be in that team unless Emery's going to spring a surprise on us. But if I had to guess, I'd say he's out. Yeah.
I just think. That's what concerns me, is that if Newcastle push up a bit more, then Arsenal, and Arsenal play either Pepe, Lacazette, or Aubameyang, any of those three, or all of those three, then it's going to be quite dangerous. But going the other way, I think Newcastle can cause problems if Almiron, Saint-Maximin, and Jolinton are all playing. I think there'll be goals in the game. I think the best Newcastle can probably hope for is a draw, probably a narrow score defeat, I think, if I'm honest.
Okay, interesting stuff. Let's go over to the live comments that are coming in. Here we go. Let's have a look. What have we got here? We've got plenty coming through. Let me just pick some of the interesting ones out. Not that the rest aren't interesting, but of course we are short of time. Liam says, I feel for Newcastle fans. They don't deserve this. I assume he's referring to the whole Mike Ashley situation. And I do too, because Newcastle are a great club. I've had the pleasure of going up to St. James's Park before. There's always a cracking atmosphere there. And you can feel, how big a part this club is of the city. It's not just a football club. It is more than that. Graham Sutherland, in response to my formation, says, that's a 1-1 formation, Harry. I'm going to bring it back on the screen while we go through these comments. Yeah, it might be a 1-1 formation in our eyes, and I'll stress the point again. It's not what I would do. It's what I think Unai Emery is going to do. So a couple of comments about David Luiz. Matthew says, surely David Luiz is not match fit. Well, David Luiz has featured in Chelsea's pre-season, so I'd be very surprised if he's not able to come straight in. Bulgarian Gooner says, I think Chambers and Ceballos will start ahead of Luiz and Willock. Healy agrees with me. He says, yep, that's Emery's likely first 11. Hopefully Laka can give us 15, 20 minutes off the bench. Limitless FA, maybe Pepe for the pace, considering he said that was a weakness in away games. I think that Pepe is just short of fitness. So I don't know if he'll play from the beginning. That's why I've made that selection. It's not that I prefer Reece Nelson or Henrik Mkhitaryan for that matter. It's just what I think Unai Emery is going to do. So that kind of rounds up the comments on the formations and things like that. We will be bringing you, like I said, these previews on a weekly basis. We'll be talking about the games ahead and stuff. And if it's a Sunday game, we'll be doing it on Friday. If it's a Saturday game, we'll hopefully be doing it on Thursday. We did do the fans phone in last night, which you can check out. Head over to our YouTube channel, or it's available in podcast format too. There was lots of you watching last night. At one point, we had over 350 of you watching live. There's 5,500 views almost already on that, not to mention the podcast. So that went brilliantly. A big thanks to every single one of you who played a part in that, of course. And a big thanks to my guest, Harry De Cosemo. Before I let you go, Harry, though, I want your prediction. What is your prediction ahead of Newcastle United versus Arsenal this coming Sunday?
I think I went for 2-1 in my preview, so I think I'll stick with that. 2-1 to Arsenal. I think Newcastle. This won't be. I think Newcastle are going to have tough times this season, but I don't think. I think there'll be a lot of positivity despite the boycott, which nobody knows how it's going to go really. I think Newcastle will be more on the front foot than they might be. If this game was taking place in November, December, I think you'll find a tougher Newcastle to face now than then, but. I just don't see it being enough because of the quality that Arsenal have, going forward. But I think if Luiz is fit and if Tierney's fit again, that's a much stronger defence as well. So
Tierney won't be fit.
Tierney's not fit. Okay, so, well, I do think Arsenal, by the way, are a good shout for the top four this season. So I think that it's going to be a tough game for Newcastle. Hopefully they'll make it tough for Arsenal, but I just think narrow defeat 2-1.
Okay, interesting stuff. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but that's just my feeling.
I think a lot of Newcastle fans would take that.
As pointed out in the comments by Matthew D'Souza, we don't tend to start the season well historically. And coupled with our poor away form, he says, is a draw a decent result? I think that the issue here is that Arsenal go away to Newcastle, which I think will draw. I think we'll beat Burnley in our second game, but then we face Liverpool and Spurs. And there's a good chance that Arsenal could end the first, say, 4 weeks of the season without very many points. And so people need to be a little bit patient. For me, I want to see improvements in the performances, in our defensive shape. That's what I'm looking for in the first few games of the season above anything else. So I'm going to try and stay as positive for as long as possible. You guys will know I've not been, Unai Emery's biggest fan over the last season or so, but I'm giving him a chance. He's got more of his own players in now. But my heart says an Arsenal win 3-1, but my head says a 1-1 draw. That brings us to the end of this preview show brought to you by the two Harrys. And we'll be back very soon. We'll be reviewing the game, of course, shortly afterwards and bringing you more content. So please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and follow Harry De Cosemo on Twitter as well. I'll leave his Twitter handle in the description. And until next time, take care. This is a Sofa Sports Media production. Follow us on Twitter at Sofa Sports Media. Subscribe to our Premier League show by searching for Sofa Sports Media on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you download them from. Join the Sofa Sports Media family to enjoy lots of exclusive content for the 2019-20 season. Sofa Sports Media. Subscribe, enjoy, and join the discussions.